Can investing just $10 a week in Bitcoin really make you a millionaire? In today's episode, we'll break down dollar cost averaging, how it works, why it's so powerful, and how it could transform small, regular investments into serious long-term wealth. Let's get into it. Dollar cost averaging, or DCA, is a strategy where you invest a fixed amount of money into an asset on a regular schedule, regardless of the price. Instead of trying to time the market, you're building a position over time. And this approach helps smooth out volatility. When Bitcoin's price drops, your $10 buys more. When it rises, your $10 buys less. Over time, this averages out your entry price and reduces the risk of going all in at the wrong time. You can see on the monthly time chart here that you'd buy, if your DCA was set up a monthly basis, you'd buy here, you'd buy here, you'd buy here, and you can see that you'd be buying as the trend line goes upwards. But then you might be buying months where Bitcoin's price would start to trend downwards. The overall effect of that would be an average price to the upside. Now let's look at some numbers. And I'm using this tool called bitcoin-dollar-cost-average.com, which is a really great tool to help you visualize and see firsthand the power of dollar cost averaging over a set period of time. So let's use, for example, 10 years ago today is when we started our Bitcoin journey, hypothetically. So let's input that here, and today is the 15th of June. So let's keep that 10 years ago being 2015. The end date is obviously today, and a periodic amount of $10, let's say on a weekly basis. And you can see that you would have spent or invested $5,220. You would have acquired 2.53 Bitcoin, which is a great amount of Bitcoin, and that would be worth $266,000, yielding a 5,000% return on investment. So what happens if we change that to a monthly basis, for example? We can only spare $10 a month on a monthly basis for the past 10 years. Seems pretty reasonable for the average person. So let's just simply click monthly. You would have spent $1,210. You'd have acquired 0.6 Bitcoin, which again is a fantastic amount of Bitcoin to hold in today's value. And that would actually be worth $63,000. Again, a 5,000% approximation return on investment. And no other asset is going to give you that anywhere close. Not real estate, not gold, not the S&P 500. Now in this analysis, we've used Bitcoin's historical returns year on year. But what happens if that changes going forwards? There's a really great tool to allow us to project forward using different growth models. And episode 2 of the Bitcoin briefing explored these compound annual growth models in depth. So please go and watch that and like and subscribe if you enjoy watching the content. But let's look at a tool called coindrip.org. This is what it looks like. And again, you get usual inputs of investment amount, DCA frequency, how much initial Bitcoin you may have at the start of your DCA model, and it allows you to change the growth model of Bitcoin going forward. So let's do that now. Let's keep our weekly amount as $10. Let's say you held no Bitcoin to start with, and let's say the growth model would be Michael Saylor's Bitcoin 24. So he predicts 29% growth for 20 years. Now you can see that if we had a DCA period of 20 years, we would have 0.019 Bitcoin at the end of our journey. We'd have invested $10,430, but our portfolio would be worth $329,915. And that again is a fantastic return on a modest compound annual growth rate of 29%. But let's say even more pessimistically, let's say 14% CAGR, which is typically the S&P 500 return. $10 a week over the next 20 years, you'd have 0.035 Bitcoin, invested $10,000, and you return $50,604 as your portfolio value. Now, Bitcoin returning 14% a year annual growth rate is very unlikely. I believe it's going to go much higher than that. So let's go for a more optimistic model. Kathy Wood of ARK Invest says at 40% growth for 6 years, you would have invested $3,130, you'd have accumulated 0.012 Bitcoin, and your portfolio would be worth $10,000. However, when we change our DCA period to the same as our previous examples, we'd see that we invested $10,430, would have accumulated 0.014 Bitcoin, and our portfolio would be now worth $1,287,007.38. So that shows that simply investing $10 a week on a 40% growth rate of Bitcoin, which is very, very doable in my opinion, over a period of 20 years, will get you to over $1 million. Getting started with dollar cost averaging and Bitcoin is so easy these days, especially since there are so many platforms that allow you to automate the process at the tap of a button. Now, I really recommend using Strike by Jack Mallers, and this is the website. I'm on the how-to page at the moment, as I just really want to highlight the fact that Strike do not take any trading fees after the first purchase, or if you set an hourly or daily purchase, there will be no trading fees after the first week of cycles. Now, I currently use a weekly DCA, so they obviously charge for the first week, but then going forwards, there is no fees at all. And it's all done automatically. You just have to simply make sure there's enough money in your account. So highly recommend downloading Strike and checking it out. And just as a disclaimer, I've got no affiliation with Strike. I just find it's the best platform out of all the ones available. So closing out the video here, I just want to highlight again why Bitcoin is the best asset you could possibly invest in. It's got a fixed supply, decentralized in nature, and growing adoption make it compelling as a long-term asset and store of value. Combine that with a disciplined DCA strategy and you've got a powerful formula for building wealth over time without needing the expertise of being a trader. If you found this helpful, hit like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, it really helps me grow the channel, guys. Let me know in the comments, are you DCAing into Bitcoin? And if so, how long have you been doing it? What's your frequency? And what do you think has worked best for you during your Bitcoin journey? Thanks for watching.